Hi, my name is Mohammed Hamza and I am one of the experts at AxeUSCE. I'm currently a chief resident at Mercy Catholic Medical Center and I finished my residency at Albany Medical Center. My med school was King Edward Medical University.
To teach you about how to make up the supplementary file and what the supplementary file should contain. Basically, the idea of supplementary file is it should contain anything that is related to your paper, but it you don't have enough space in your paper to put that stuff in. So, for example, if the primary outcomes, if let's say you have a four primary outcomes and 10 secondary outcomes, then the four primary outcomes should be the part of the main paper, and 10 secondary outcomes should be a part of your secondary file. Secondary file should also contain, the checklist like Prisma checklist, Amstar checklist. It should also contain your search, the detailed search strategy. It should contain, as I said, the secondary outcomes, their plots. It should contain your secondary. It should contain the bias check like publication bias, forest plot. It should contain, if you are done doing regression, it should contain all your remaining bubble plots. If you are apart from that, it should also contain some extra tables, such as if you are making a baseline table, if you're, let's say you are making two or three tables, then one table, the main table should be a part of the paper, but the rest of the table should be a part of the supplementary file. And at the end of it, the supplementary file should contain your quality check. So that's what supplementary file should contain. And the way I roll about it is, so when I'm writing the paper, in my mind, I scheme the supplementary file accordingly. So let's say I'm writing the paper. This is the abstract, and this is the introduction, and this is the method. So first thing in my supplementary is always a Prisma checklist and ANSAR checklist. Okay, so pay attention to this, Rajendra. That
Mhm.
supplemental S1 and supplemental S2. So Prisma should be my supplemental S1, ANSAR should be supplemental S2, and that's for every paper that I do, no matter what paper I write, because these are
Mhm.
the main two checklists that I put in my paper all the time. It increases the quality of my paper. Okay. So the next thing I do is the next thing is my supplementary should contain is the literature search strategy. So basic search strategy is of searching PubMed, Embase, Cochrane, whatever as well. And then this contains only the superficial, the outline of search strategy. The detailed search strategy should be in my supplemental. Okay.
Mhm.
Then what I would do is I would in my methods I would mention the data collection, what data I'm collecting, what are the primary outcome, what are the secondary outcomes, the primary secondary outcomes. If you can if there are a lot of primary outcomes, then you can you can only put the definition on the main one. Or if there, let's say, a lot of primary outcomes, then every primary outcome should have its definition. Obviously, you cannot put the definition of primary. Then you say that these are the primary outcomes we're discussing, and their definitions can be found in the supplementary file as well. This is a part of a paper related to your paper, but not technically, should be a part of the main paper. It should be a part of supplementary, the definitions of outcomes that you're trying to say. Then, so now I'm done with the method. Now I'll start putting the results. So you see what I'm doing here. I did that, how many articles were there, how many articles were reported, nine studies were reported in the total. So this is my supplemental SP. This is the same thing I'm telling them that this is the way I did my search strategy. So this is supplemental SP. So this I'm telling you this is my search strategy.
So
So
search
with a
strategy is supplemental three, right?
supplemental, it's normally usually my supplemental three, almost always.
Uh-huh.
Then I
Okay.
go and say, for example, a total of this many patients were included, and this figure one is almost all the time is my Prisma flowchart. Prisma flowchart should be a part of the main paper. It's not supplementary. So Prisma flowchart and the search strategy are complementary to each other. So Prisma flowchart should be a part of the main paper and supplement and search strategy should be a part of the supplemental file. When I go through supplemental file, you will see what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Then the table one is the baseline characteristics. I put as a table one. If there
Mhm.
are more table ones, let's say if there is a table for baseline, let's say there's a baseline characteristic of the patients in the study, let's say diabetes, hypertension, whatever. And there is a table for, let's say, the lesion characteristics, or there is a table for procedural characteristics. Now, these are extra tables. They are important for the study to explain what I'm doing with, but the paper, as frankly, a single paper can only has space for four images and a few tables. So I'm not going to crowd the paper with all those tables. So I'm going to put those tables in supplementary file as well. I can
Mhm.
show you an example how I did that. Then the primary outcomes, let's say the important primary outcomes are always a part of main paper. So this is my figure two. But the secondary outcomes are my supplemental. You see here. Now in this paper, I'm doing post-procedural secondary outcomes, then vascular secondary outcomes, then renal secondary outcomes. So every subgroup of secondary outcomes is separate supplemental file, supplemental F5, S4, S5, and X6. Then I
Mhm.
did regression. So regression, once you do a regression means that you actually make a table based on the regression variables or regression coefficient. That's a part of the main paper. But
Mhm.
all the bubble plots, which are the plots of the results of your regression, are my supplemental. So for every outcome, I made a separate bubble plot table or separate collage bubble plot. And every
Mhm.
collage is named a supplemental. So this is supplemental F7 to F17. Okay. And then I did publication bias. So if I did a publication bias, so this has less than 10 studies. So I did not need to do a forest plot, or sorry, funnel plot. But if it had more than 10 studies, then I would do a funnel plot separately for all the outcomes. And then those funnel plots would be my supplement and another supplemental file. Then quality assessment, I would do quality assessment as I would do separately for NOS and for observational studies and for RCTs. For observation studies, I use Newcastle or Tawa scale, and that's a separate supplemental file. And if I do for RCT, then that's a supplemental. It's a ROB tool, which I will tell you later. Then it's a separate supplemental file. Okay.
Mhm.
And then if there is a lot of heterogeneity, if I need to explain heterogeneity, which I cannot explain by Cochrane handbook, let's say if I have more than 10 studies, then I have to do a sensitivity analysis or leave one out analysis. Then that would be a part of another separate supplemental file. So all those, you know, 7, 8, 9, 10, or maybe until 20, all those would be a part of a supplemental file. Okay. So
Okay.
remember how I labeled those supplementals. So this is the paper, and let me go through the, uh, let me go through here. So this will, in this is basically the same paper, but I am gonna show you how I do the stuff, how I am doing the supplemental file here. So let me just go down all the way. So after the references, I put in figures and tables legend. Okay, so this is important. So first table, so these tables come first, figures come second. So what was the first table?
Baseline.
Baseline. So baseline demographics would be the first table. So that is table one. Then table two, what was that? Meta regression coefficient, which I mentioned here, right?
Mhm.
So this would be the second table. Figure one would be a Prisma flow chart, flow strategy. So as I said, this is a Prisma flow strategy. And then figure two, as I said, will be the forest plot of my primary outcome. And figure three the last figure would be the graphical abstract. Okay.
Mhm.
So these are the figures. Then I would label it table one, table two, and then I would add table one here, as I mentioned above, in the same order. Then I would mention table two here, which is the, coefficient table in the same order. And then I would say figure one, which is the Prisma flow chart,
Mhm.
is here. Then the primary outcome, which is here. And then I'm waiting for the graphical abstract. So this is the graphical abstract of figure three. So after figure three are my supplemental files. So index would be determined by what are you putting it in. As I said, the first thing in our index should be what? Prisma.
Prisma.
There is Prisma. The second thing in supplemental should be what?
Abstract tool.
AMSA is AMSA. The third thing I said is the search strategy, full search strategy.
Mhm.
Okay. So, and the research strategy. So it's supplemental S2. Then S4, S5, S6, I told you that it was what? It was the secondary outcome, right? Different
Secondary.
groups of secondary outcomes. So if you have one secondary outcome, then I would say it's S4. If you have multiple groups of secondary outcomes, then you can put the S4, S5, whatever, however you want to do. Then, so S4, S5, S6. Then I told you that I'm going to make the bubble plot of all the individual outcomes. So
Mhm.
these are all the individual outcomes that we studied. So every outcome has its own supplemental bubble plot, collage bubble plot. So S7 is bubble plot of 30-day mortality, S8 bubble plot of 30-day admission, and so on. And supplemental S18 is the NOS scale.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
So this I need to fill in the Prisma, but Prisma when it will be filled, it would come here. M star, M star would come here as supplemental S2. Then the PICO is a research question. Comparison of, so this is the research question, what we actually trying to look for. Then PCOs mean what is the population. So in this study, we're actually looking for emergent TAVR versus elective TAVR with or without BAV in, I think I should also put here, severe infection, with severe infection. Okay, so its population is here. Then intervention, emergent TAVR.
Mm,
Comparison, elective TAVR with or without BAV. So this is the comparison. Outcomes, what are the outcomes you are studying? The primary outcome is this, and the secondary outcomes are divided into periprocedural outcomes, vascular and renal. So periprocedural outcomes are length of stay, procedural success, paravalvular leak, and pacemaker use. So these are all my four periprocedural outcomes. Vascular outcomes are 30 days stroke, vascular complications, and vascular complication. This is the definition of vascular complication, and then major bleeding. If I had put a definition, if I so because I had only one variable to explain, so I did not want to make a separate table of all the outcomes or definition of outcomes. But if I had multiple outcomes which needed explanation, I would have made a table and I would make the table as the supplemental F4.
mm,
Okay.
okay.
Then um, major bleeding, then renal outcomes or AKI and use of RRT. Okay. And then
Okay.
study type, what exactly am I doing? What kind of study I'm doing? What kind of method I'm doing? So this is basically whoever does the analysis has to guide you. So I'm doing odds ratio to compare binary outcomes. So if you see here, I'm all here everywhere. I'm explaining the odds ratio, right? So this is the odds ratio for binary outcomes and hedges G to compare continuous outcome. Okay, and then you add a few mesh terms related to your paper. You can add how many you want, but it should
Mm,
be relevant to your paper. Okay,
okay.
then sometimes I do is sometimes I add my own. This is the network map. You can make this. Some people put in the URL of the PubMed where how they search it. I either do this or what I do is I make. You remember when I initially shared with you the strategy. I shared with you this strategy.
Brinda versus EVN, that's the one.
So I actually shared this strategy with you, right?
Yeah.
So I just copy paste it and I would copy paste it as a search strategy. So basically what I would do, I would just copy it and I would just you know I would just paste it here in the place of this one.
Okay.
So basically, what it means is that whenever you do a meta-analysis, the search strategy that you're doing, it has to be reproducible. Whoever tries to repeat your meta-analysis, so should be able to get the same number of studies
Mm,
and should be able to repeat the results that you have done. That is a scientific method,
yeah.
which means that the way you got the list of your studies should be reproducible. In old times, but whenever they used to do an experiment, they would carefully record all the methods of that experiment, so that if anybody else tries to replicate that experiment, he would come to the same conclusion.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the thing here. When we are trying to do a meta-analysis, so a meta-analysis basically what we're trying to do is um, the search strategy that we are doing, how we're looking for studies, we give a detailed search strategy here so that whoever tries to replicate our search strategy would come with the same number of studies.
Mm,
Okay. Then the secondary outcomes, as we discussed here, the second. So let me just show you here. So this is our supplemental file index, right? So secondary outcomes, I'm putting it all here. Then S5 is vascular outcomes. I'm putting them all here. The renal outcomes, which were five procedural, vascular, and renal. I'm putting them all. Then these are all bubble plots. The way
well, okay.
So every outcome has, I think, 18 bubble plots here because we are doing regression with 18 variables. So for every outcome, we are regressing at least 12 to 18 variables. So you will see 12 to 18 bubble plots. So 30-day mortality has three collages, and all of them are grouped under S7. Okay.
Mm,
Then 30-day readmission has same way, 18 collages. So they are all grouped under 30-day admission, and so and so. Okay. So for every collage. Sometimes regression, you do not have enough data, so you cannot run regression. But whichever variable you can run regression against, you have to make sure that you record it bubble plot. So I'm doing all. So I made a collage of all the bubble plots. Now, how do I make collages? It's very easy. I just go to, so let's say I can, so what I do is how to make collages. I can show you as well. So let's say this was the study that I did and this was the analysis. So let's say this is the bubble plot. So this is the bubble plot, right? This is a large one. To make it small, I make it, let's say 50%, or let's say make it a little bit more clear, let's say 60%. So I do it 60%, I press Control plus Shift plus S. Sorry,
Control plus Shift plus S.
Windows plus Shift plus S. Windows
Okay.
Shift S, that's how you can do use the snipping tool. That's a shortcut for snipping tool. So I
Uh-huh.
do Windows plus Shift plus S. The snipping comes on. I snip it. Once I snip it, I snip it very carefully. I snip it, then I go to Paint, and then I just paste it here. So, and then I do the same thing for six or seven other ones, so that I make a six-figure plot,
Uh-huh.
and that I save as one image. That becomes an image. Okay, then I do that for everything else.
Okay.
Okay, so that's how what I do
So
is that.
how do I make this bubble plot for my study?
So bubble plots is will be made if I did the regression. So I did not did regression, so there will be no bubble plot.
Okay.
So I'm just telling you, I'm just for this is a common lecture I'm giving. I'm actually going to record. I'm recording it for everybody else, so that whoever is going to do this, they know how to do it.
Okay.
So this is for regression. Then the same thing I do with length of stay, all the outcomes, uh, collages with the bubble plots. Once I'm done, so it goes all the way to S17. So it goes all the way to S17. Okay, so here's it. Now, once I'm done with the bubble plots, I need to do the Newcastle-Ottawa scale. So this is the quality check. First, such quality check can be done in two ways. If my for observational studies, because all the studies involved in this topic were all observational, so I did only have to do Newcastle-Ottawa. If they were, let's say, studies of RCTs, then I would have done Rob tool as well. So Newcastle becomes S17. If there would have so actually this becomes S18, not S17. It becomes S17. Yeah. So if I had a Rob scale, Rob, then it would have become S19. Any question so far?
Okay. So if there's like observational and RCTs together, what scale you said?
So if there were RCTs and observation together, so observations would be studied in a different way. So observation I do not score, and if there were RCTs, I would do a separate Rob tool or risk of cochrane, risk of bias tool. I will show you in a minute.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So
Yeah.
this is what I would do. This is so. Any question regarding your paper? How would you make supplemental file?
So this one, Prisma checklist. Let's start with
Yeah.
this one.
Okay. So Prisma checklist. What do you want to do? Prisma checklist. So Prisma checklist is actually this thing. Let me I start. Okay. So when I say Prisma checklist, I basically I'm referring to. Wait, minimize it. So this is a Prisma checklist. Um. So Prisma checklist is this one. So this is the Prisma checklist.
Okay.
So I can actually share with you. So I can actually share with you on WhatsApp. So this is the Prisma checklist, and let me
Okay.
share with you the AMP star as well. But normally I do them after I'm done with the whole paper. I don't use them at the start of the paper. Let me review the AMP star. So this is the AMP star. So Prisma is a checklist that whenever we are done, we say it's a systematic review. Yes. Then we say title must explain this. Then abstract. Where is the abstract reported? Which page number? So this needs page number where the things are reported. Okay. So
Oh,
whatever
there
you
are
do,
page number. Okay.
so they want page number wherever you did. So let's say if you did describe the processes used to decide which studies were eligible, which I told you that this is part of our search strategy. So whichever page number has the search strategy, we'll write the page number here.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, and next question.
Similarly for the Amstar.
AmStar is different. So AmStar said, did the research question in choosing criteria review the components of Pico? So yes,
Yes.
it was in our S3. So I would say yes. If we are time frame for follow up, then it would be optional. But yes, then yes. For partial yes, yeah, partial yes, a full yes. You will ask these questions to yourself and see if
Mhm.
your study fulfills with these criteria. If you ask this question to yourself and study fulfills partial yes criteria, full yes criteria, then you say yes or full yes or partial yes. And what I do is basically I click this one and sorry this option. Yes. Okay. So let's say I do this.
Okay, so we edit as per our paper and then we keep
Add for
this
exactly, and then we
chart.
put the final paper in the chart.
Okay.
Okay. So that's for
Yeah.
answer. What else? What other question do you have?
I think those two, and then search strategy we already have, and then those are now the bubble plots
So
for
bubble
my
plots.
study.
So your study does not have regression. So bubble plots are only when I did the regression. I do not think I did regression for your paper. So if
Yeah.
your paper does not have regression, then it should not have bubble plots.
Okay. Okay, that's fine.